Thank you everyone for joining us, and good evening and good morning to Dr. Carter, who's up very early, Professor Carter, up very early in Singapore. It's 6:30 a.m. there, but it's 6:30 p.m. here in the BVI. So good evening to all who are joining us from the BVI, and good morning to Professor Carter. Welcome to the BVI Fintech Training Program Information Session, which is being brought to you by the Financial Services Institute, BVI Finance, and the National University of Singapore Computing Studies School of Computing. Singapore is ranked as the first on the list of the tech-savvy nations. It's the most tech-savvy nation in the world. The government of Singapore plays an important role in achieving this position as it promotes the digital agenda of the country, and it has been rewarded for its continuous efforts to bolster citizen services through digital technology. BVI aspires to be tech-savvy, and we expect that we would be able to emulate Singapore in being one of the most tech-savvy countries in the world. We have a long way to go, but we aim to get there. Over the last couple of years, we've heard that the BVI's cryptocurrency market is among the largest in the world, and that leading fintech companies have chosen to incorporate in the BVI. We've had a digital economy symposium. We've had a fintech immersion with Professor Carter over the last couple of years. And certainly the digital disruption has been accelerated during the COVID period. And what we've seen is that fintech and digital services has been growing exponentially, in some instances by 40%, where other industries are struggling. Fintech and digital services has been growing exponentially. So what we have been seeing is that there's an aspiration for the BVI, as I said, to emulate Singapore in some respects and to become more tech savvy. But there's a gap between what the industry needs and what we are able to source in the BVI. So we have come together, the Financial Services Institute, BVI Finance, and the National University of Singapore, to try to see how we can bridge that gap, how we can bridge the gap between the needs for us to grow in this sector and providing the resources, the human capital that would allow us to really become tech savvy and really grow in fintech. Here to talk to us about this program that we are endeavoring on is Dr. Derry Hodge. And Dr. Derry Hodge, he's the director of the Financial Services Institute at the H. Lavity Stout Community College. He is also a former professor and dean of workforce training, and he has over 17 years experience in academic and professional education. With an interdisciplinary background, he holds degrees in theology, finance, and international business, and a professional diploma in governance, risk, and compliance with distinction. He is a member of the International Compliance Association and a fellow of the Chartered Governance Institute. His current role at the Financial Services Institute involves strategic development and quality assurance of professional courses and training programs tailored for financial services industry in the BVI. Also joining us halfway across the world, and we thank him for waking up this morning, is Professor Keith Carter. Keith Carter's mission, he says, is to help others succeed through lecturing, writing, inventing, and mentoring. He also delivers results by leading several big data projects in retail, fintech, supply chain, and education. Personally, he leads a men's Bible study, and with his wife and a family, he asks, why do people with good facts make bad decisions? And I guess for that, he has authored the book, Actionable Intelligence. Professor Carter consults he is an associate professor at the National University of Singapore School of Computing, where he has two mandates, teaching and consulting. He has a passion for engaging and inspiring students to achieve more. He teaches supply chain visualization and purchasing and materials management and connects students with companies at all levels to bring the theory to life in the business world. He consults senior business leaders in strategy, actionable intelligence, design thinking, and human capital. He is consultant to the president of Hong Leong Finance, the managing director of Bolor, non-executive director of Data Rama, a fintech startup, past principal advisor of KPMG, and past executive director of Mentorica, a mobile big data solution provider. He is invited to speak around the world, including prestigious venues, TEDx, Gartner, IBM, KPMG, Sing Health, Media and Infocom Development Authority, Financial Times, as well as The Economist, and more. From 1999 to 2012, Keith worked for Estee Lauder Companies, Global Supply Chain Center of Excellence, and he was tasked with strategic changes to supply chain to improve the overall performance of the company. Keith established and led global supply chain initiatives, supply chain intelligence, knowledge management, transformation, governance, and data management, all to achieve end-to-end supply chain visibility. From 1995 to 1998, Keith Carter worked as a consultant for Andersen Consulting in New York, now Accenture, and his clients included Goldman Sachs, St. Paul Reinsurance, New York State, as well as Smith Barney. Keith holds an MBA from Cornell University and a bachelor's degree in electrical and computer science, computer systems engineering, and is a certified procurement and and he's certified in procurement and counterterrorism. I want to welcome Dr. Hodge and Professor Carter, who are going to be our main speakers for tonight on this Fintech information program information session, so you can learn all about what we intend to do and that we hope to fill that gap between the needs and the resources. Dr. Hodge, Professor Carter.
Okay, well, thank you, Elise, and welcome to everyone. Looking at the list of attendees, I see many friends and acquaintances. I'm glad that you joined us tonight and happy to be able to share just a bit about this program, an important program. And I think that you'll find the information we share tonight very useful and will help you in terms of decision making. It is fundamentally a course, a training program, and as Elise said, it is absolutely designed to prepare persons for careers in fintech or just to diversify their portfolio and add fintech subject matter and material to their portfolio. So looking forward to dialoguing with you and getting this program going. Keith, over to you.
All right. And good evening, everyone from Singapore. And also, I think we're in similar temperatures at least, but the sun hasn't risen on this side yet. And I know that talking with Derry and Elise, you still have a bit of sunlight over there. Thank you, Elise, for your very warm welcome. I know that I was blushing earlier as you were talking as through this, so and that's hard to do as well. So thanks again for that warm welcome. And I enjoyed also being over in British Virgin Islands several years ago, seeing the excellence and the heart and the spirit of the people that are there. And so I'm really excited to work with Derry and Elise and bringing this program into BVI so that we can all work together. And what is now acutely known as digital transformation, but to be realistic, it's about going into the future, creating more jobs than ever before, and having really exciting inflection in history, not that we have seen since the 1920s and 30s with the introduction of electricity, the telephone, and cars. We're now seeing the introduction of great new technologies. They're taking time to be adopted, similar amounts of time, but we can look back at history and see how significant things changed because of the technology. Someone said something very interesting a couple of days ago. They said, people, they talk about transformation and so forth and technology and what have you, and how can people transform? That's been happening since fire was invented, since the wheel was invented. Humans have always had new technologies and transformed. This is no different. And so today, as we walk through, we hope to provide you with a great platform, great knowledge, resources, and an international program that lets you move forward into the future. So let's get started here. I'm going to share my screen and take you through a few things. There's 3 key words I'd love for you all to keep in mind. They are know, decide, and act. Derry, Elise, and I are going to share with you some things that maybe you should know more about. And we hope that you'll take a moment to consider and decide, what does it mean for you? What does it mean for your company? What could it mean for your career? And ultimately, that you might take action. If there's something here that you found that was exciting, you might look at it and say, hey, listen, I'm going to really take action on this. Or that you may decide, well, maybe there's someone else I know that needs to hear this, needs to understand it. You might take action and share with them. So know, decide, act. Those 3 words are critical. Well, the in-US Fintech program, we started last year, the National University of Singapore Fintech, because there was a crisis over here in Singapore too. We're an island, we have an economy, we don't have a lot of natural resources, but our main natural resources are people. And the government began a very strong effort to bring in new companies, even during COVID-19. So there were announcements like Zoom put their headquarters here, Tencent, etc. But then there was this, as Elise talked about, this talent gap, where our graduates were coming out of the university saying, I can't find a job. I'm not getting hired. But then we would talk to companies and other types of organizations, government entities, and they would say, I can't find talent. No one's coming with these skills of digital and so forth. And so with that, we kicked off this program with the goal of upskilling new grads and mid-career, because both were impacted by the change in COVID-19 and tourism and transportation and so forth. And then enabling fintech transformation in organizations and establishing new fintech organizations. And back in 2018, there were a few people that were already running fintech startups, doing payments and so forth. Of course, in Singapore, it's similar, but then growing those further. So the target of this program is, we've spent the past several months molding and shaping what's been done in Singapore so that it's customized and appropriate for British Virgin Island to help build the BVI fintech ecosystem and to compete globally, but with your own local talent. And that's been a key thing here in Singapore, is that companies are encouraged by the government to hire Singaporean skilled workers in fintech and digital and more. The program that we're going to take you through is a structured and intensive hands-on programming. We love to have folks learn the concepts, but then go right into how do we use it, and then ultimately deliver projects so that you can apply what you've learned. And that brings you through the pathway of learning, you know, hearing, writing, and then actually doing, or the three ways that we need to learn as people. So then ultimately we're reaching out and have talked with several different government and private entities in terms of working, taking in people that might go through this program so that that way they can grow themselves, work on their own projects as well, and potentially then have a career path at those organizations. This is another step in something that was kicked off also in 2018. Back then, we had established a memorandum of understanding between BVI government and NUS. And we've kept talking through that time. We had some of the colleagues from the BVI come over to Singapore, and we all signed it together as well. And then once we launched this program, we said, let's reconnect, let's make sure something follows on with that MOU, which has the education aspect and research aspect. And so what Elise had talked about, how there's a supply crunch in Singapore, there's also, in talking with business leaders in BVI over these past couple of weeks, they've said, look, we can't find talent either. We're not able to find this type of programmer, that type of user experience designer, this type of business process change head, that type of security person. So there's a similar type of challenge in BVI. Of course, this is in collaboration also with the Financial Services Institute. So Derry, would you like to add some few words here?
Yeah. Well, of course. Okay, thank you, Keith. All right, so I think most persons will be familiar with the FSI. Might be one or two that may not, but the FSI has been around for going on 19 years now, and we've been providing training and professional qualifications for the financial services jurisdiction of the BVI, like I said, over 19 years now. And I've listed there some of the programs that we provide, but just linking to what we're trying to do here, I like to think that the FSI has always been on the cutting edge of introducing programs that are going to help develop talent and the human resources within the financial services sector. Now, of course, this program is much broader than just the financial services industry, but we're absolutely delighted to be a part of it. And as Keith just said, there's been a lot of background discussions, the MOU signed, etc. But quite frankly, nothing in terms of training. And so when I was approached by Elise and we contacted Keith, I was just delighted to be able to work with them to get things in place to get this program moving. So I'd just like to say the FSI is just delighted to be a part. This is what we exist to do, and we're looking forward to delivering this program for you.
Thank you, Derry.
Okay.
And when we had met last time, these are some of the team members or government leaders rather in British Virgin Island that we talked about and established the idea around actionable intelligence, this program, and digital transformation and more. So to connect with what Derry said about FSI, the School of Computing is here to also connect with you. And our goal and what we want to do globally is help to transform people's daily lives safely through fintech. And our goal is to educate ecosystems, regulators, lawyers, everyone through our Crystal Center, which is the deep tech, cryptocurrency, security, technology, and algorithmic system. And then on our FinTech Lab, which is, I'm director of this and co-director of the Crystal Center, where we look at experiential education. How do we let people touch and feel this as well? We also like to teach young people. So one of the things we're going to talk about briefly today is fintech literacy and financial literacy, and an opportunity to also play a part in that in the BVI. And that's something we're also doing here in Singapore. And what our dean said, as digitalization becomes an essential anchor for our economy, it's crucial to provide companies with a foundation, knowledge, experience, and resources, and for future-ready talent and enterprises to succeed. So our goal is really to bring that future-ready talent in place, and that's where we hope to connect the dots with you. What is a fintech ecosystem? We see it as having 5 different components: talent, funding, making sure that's coming in from private and public sources, because you're experimenting, you're trying out new things, you're encouraging people to move into new roles, new careers. So there's some risk, so there's typically funding. Government, making sure that the regulations are in place, the policies are guided by both economic priorities and also social priorities. So we work regularly with various entities on that. Innovation, of course, is a need. Every country, every mind needs to be looking at innovation. And in Industry 4.0, it was never about manufacturing plus. It was about really being able to lead a company from every chair, from where you sit, because you can literally have a discussion across companies across the world today just from your home. And so innovation is key. What do new businesses look like? What do new business processes look like? And of course, customers, working with key banks and institutions. And so the advisors to the program, we didn't build this in a vacuum here. And although National University of Singapore is ranked number 4 in the entire world for computer science, we said, listen, we're not the only ones who have knowledge. We need to go out and reach to various companies. So we have worked with Ripple, World Economic Forum, Bank of New York Mellon, one of the largest bank in terms of assets under management, $22 trillion. UBS, largest wealth management, and they've hired 50 of our graduates over at UBS, for example. And venture capital firms that you may not have heard of, like Expara and more. And we also asked our recent grads, so what didn't you learn during undergraduate that you think you might need now as you go into business? And then as they went over to Amazon Cloud and others. So we've had input from international companies and also input from BVI organizations as well. The outcome of the program is that we would like for you to be able to go into business roles or technology roles. See, this device isn't just technology people. Sometimes business leaders and especially human resource might think, oh, I should just hire full stack developers. That's what we need. A full stack developer doesn't know what color to wear in the morning, right? They don't necessarily talk well with people. And although you might develop something that works well and is secure, it still won't look nice. It still won't get the adoption and attraction that it needs. So you have to have both business and technology, liberal arts and engineering in order to make this digital economy move. And so we have out within this program, learning such that people get to be good adoption and change managers, automation engineers, which when you do automation of business processes today, you don't need to do programming. It's 2021. You don't have to start with a Python screen. You can start with a robotic process automation tool. One of them recently went public, for example, and it's going to continue to transform businesses. Quality leads. Once you develop something, technically, you need someone to check, is this good quality? And one thing I know about BVI is quality is king there. Business analysts, of course, need to understand how this impacts the business. Profitability is the key. It's not just cool technology that's important. You have to have delivered a profitable, useful system. And don't forget people that have an arts background. We never loved an application unless it looked great and it was easy to use. And that's where the traditional graphics designer goes over into user experience and user interface design during our design thinking course, as well. So these all come together and then are supported by the technical roles, the front-end developer, the back-end developer, the person who's doing database engineering to make sure the data's right, and of course, looking at cybersecurity. So these all come together in order to enable digital payments, digital insurance, exchanges, and more. And these are things that Elise and I have been talking about over several years. How can BVI come in and use these types of technologies? How can we develop and implement a digital exchange, blockchain-based insurance, automation in the banking system, and more? And so this program has as an outcome your ability to play into one of these roles here. We know that after a few weeks, you aren't an expert programmer. We teach computer science. I teach a master's program that takes years to become an expert programmer. But what we do expect is that you'll have put a foot in the door. You would have been able to demonstrate your acumen, your capability, and your interest in this area so that companies can give you roles and you can begin to go down that career of the technical role if you want it to, or an enhanced role in the business side. Gary, anything on this point?
No, not at all. You're doing fine, Keith.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some key things to keep in view also is the demand. We just took a quick look at LinkedIn. There are some companies hiring over in BVI for blockchain developers and digital services. And then in terms of salaries, it was looking at an average base pay, right, of 92K for a software engineer, the low 63, but the high 134. And the number, if you looked across various engineering roles, they were also in that 90 to 100K range. And of course, what's very interesting is you don't forget this. Once you get into one of these types of roles and you have experience, your talent as an engineer can be used anywhere in the world these days. Just like I'm talking with you on Zoom, there's companies like Tumblr. How many of you know Tumblr on the social media platform? So they have something called an open hiring practice, which means they don't put locations anymore in their job description. Instead, what they say is, our collaboration time is from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. California time, but our job openings are to the world. You can be anywhere in the world and work with us, because even here in Singapore, you know, not everyone can go to the office. And so we've all been working from home now for almost a year, more than a year, unbelievably, and teaching and so forth. So companies have come to realize, hey, wait a second, you can do this from home. You can execute perfectly well from your desk. But what that means is that smaller countries like ours, Singapore and BVI, we don't have to be outside at the big country. We can actually run a company. We can do its work. We can do jobs anywhere in the world. Unfortunately, that means that the competition can come in from anywhere in the world too. So we all have to lift our competitive game. The competition is no longer just local. It's very much global.
Yeah. Yeah. Just in relation to that, Keith, right? Yeah. So we've been having some initial discussions with several local firms, really thinking about the project phase of the program. But just in the discussion so far, we have discovered some local opportunities for jobs in the area of fintech. And I listed a couple of those. Right now, there's a firm looking for an applications developer, database engineer, business analyst, process engineer, security engineer, and change and project manager. And right now, and they're having difficulties finding local talent. So of course, they're looking at recruiting from overseas. So, and they said to us, if we had, one firm said, if we had the talent available right now, we would hire them. So there are opportunities here, right here in BVI, that are waiting in this area. Yeah.
Exactly right. Exactly right. I've heard, we've all been on those conversations, and you should hear the folks say, so it's difficult to find. And so we welcome people from all different backgrounds. You should have a keen interest, though, in learning fintech, the processes, the case studies, and more, and also a keen interest in technology. This isn't for the faint of heart. The comments that we get are, I didn't know about programming, it's hard. I know programming, it's challenging. And so we do challenge people in a rigorous way through the program. There's no way about getting into something new except for having some sort of effort involved. And we do push that effort. What's the program structure look like? Well, first of all, we want to motivate you on why fintech is important, then how, and ultimately what. On the why part, we take you through case studies, what succeeded, what's failed, because we can learn a lot from failure. You get to look at the technology and try things out. We give you problems and we do tool selection. And ultimately, we get into a whole new way of thinking about meetings and getting the know, decide, and act in place, which is through design thinking. And then through that, you actually develop a business and plan and an app prototype and more. Then we say, well, how do you do this? So you've created something, a prototype, etc. We've done the business case, the presentations on it. Let's get into how. So we go through how you can manage these things from deployment, front-end development, back-end development, and more. And you do your data analysis. And ultimately, we also have the elective here on algo trading, if that's something you wanted to look into. Algorithmic trading is about having the computer execute investment trades for you. Then ultimately what, which is the traineeship, going into those partner companies with a specific project that we've curated together with the company to make sure that the learning objectives that we had for you are met, plus the objectives the company has are met, so that you can turn around and the company can say, hey, wait a second, this person delivered a really interesting project. They delivered something well. Let's bring them on board permanently. Or you are already in this role over here. Let's adjust your role and maybe make this a new career path for you. So we don't recommend people leave their company to join this program, but rather, if you're in the company, stay, continue to work there, but join us on this journey to go deeper into this. Derek?
Yep. No, absolutely. Nothing to add there.
Okay, and Elise?
Nothing to add. It's just, as we said, it's important for us to really develop the skill sets that are necessary for us to progress as a country. I think we have had lots of conversations. We now have a lot of organizations and different people involved in this field, but we need to make sure that we develop our capacity so that we are just not on a superficial level, but we are really integrated into making sure that we have the human resource capital that can allow us to really dig deeper and to develop ourselves as a country in moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah, Keith, you may want to mention also the certification. So there is a professional certification from NUS available upon completion of each of the modules there. Yeah.
That's right. That's exactly right. And so with this, you get a joint certification with National University of Singapore from the School of Computing. And in particular, to earn that certification, it's showing up at the class, at least we're looking at 100% attendance for you all to be able to come in there, 6 weeks to 8 weeks via Zoom on a daily basis for 2 hours each day. Then we have the courses themselves, which are Fintech. This is the course I kick off with, leading how do we look at these things and problems and statements, the design thinking aspect as well. Our API and RPA, which is application programming interface, which is what banks are all looking at around the world these days, where you have this open API, you're able to have people onboard into the bank without ever having to leave. You can actually, in Singapore, with the connection between the government, which is GovTech, and with our bank, we can go to our bank and open up a new account, brand new account, never had an account at the bank before, and use something called SingPass, which is our identification. And then the bank uses an application programming interface to look and access the government record and say, is this KYC, AML all okay? If GovTech just gives a yes or no, doesn't give all the information, just gives a yes or no to the bank, then you can open your bank account and you're finished in 15 minutes sitting at home. The RPA part is the robotic process automation. So how does the bank account get open? It wasn't just connecting the data, it's actually the robot taking and acting on it. So for example, ANZ Bank has more than 3,000 robots running inside of it today. DBS Bank looks at 24,000 different points of interaction with users and collects that data using robots. And so robotic process automation has been around since I was a boy. We had implemented it back in Anderson Consulting in the 90s. But still today, companies haven't put in RPA, which is very interesting to us. And so this is your opportunity to learn this exciting field, 30-year-old field, but yet exciting field. And it's what makes us happy about Google, about Expedia, about Airbnb, about anything where you don't ever interact with a human in order to get things done. So you can imagine that this is going to be one of the anchor courses here. The other anchor course is the business analytics. And so once you're generating data because you're engaging with the user in a digital way, you need some way to analyze that data. And again, this isn't starting off with a blank Python screen. Instead, Python is a programming language, which I'm referring to. Instead, it's using a system like Power BI, Microsoft Power BI, where literally in 2021, you can design, create everything, and then be able to visualize the most important questions businesses have. Where are we today? Are we happy or sad? And most importantly, how do we win tomorrow? And so these aspects of business are critical, but you have to have good data in order to do so. And the elective course is one on algo trading theory and practice, where you can look at various investment assets, whether it's equities or Forex or cryptocurrency, and look at how those get invested. This is an elective. It's these 4 courses here that are the core program that you would go through. We don't just teach the theory though. We like to also have these additional skills, and the dynamic leader, Jack Welch over at General Electric, had instilled these 4 E's and a P. Energy, the resilience, the go, go, go attitude regardless of what's going on, and energizing others. So it's not just about you. Edge, the ability to make tough calls, yes or no. Here's an idea, do we do it or not, and why? Execute, just very simply, just get it done. There's no excuse to not being fully digital in 2021. There's so many tools available and great ways to learn those tools, which we're bringing to you today. And finally, passion, caring and understanding and going deep into a discipline, going deep into making a change and making a difference. Now, I like to add 2 additional P's to this list because sometimes I don't have enough strength for all this on my own, and that is prayer and ultimately then giving praise. But that's just me. It's up to you what your views are.
And me.
Okay.
2 preachers.
So ultimately here are the ways that we'll be working together. There's an enrollment process. We want this to have the right people in the program. People that are dedicated are going to be working hard with us. Your instructors are going to work hard as well with you. And so we do have a registration and interviews Not everyone makes it in. Then for the suitable candidates, like I said, we can bring people in from various areas, but we're looking for people who are willing to take this step to upskill. So you may need to learn some things ahead of time. Then as you go in, you will need to spend extra time as you go through and learn. It's a fast track program. And also we have this focus on fintech. I like to talk about the fun stuff, the learning aspects, what you need to do, what you're going to be able to do afterwards. I don't like to talk about costs, so I turn it over to Elise and Derry.
You mentioned that, some of the outcomes, and we've been having conversations here. We have our digital asset working group. We are talking about developing a LLC. We have a cryptocurrency club, and they're doing a number of things. So what are some of the tangible projects? You mentioned some, but I want you to just go a little deeper in terms of some of the tangible projects that could be outcome of this program. We talked about doing insurance exchange or crypto exchange. What are some of the tangible projects?
Yep. So here are the projects, and I'll wait just a moment for the screen to share over to everybody. So looking over at first, digital payments. This is something that you would have read about 4 or 5 years ago, where it's becoming so important. Now, as you begin to look back, digital payments was important because you have Stripe, you have Coinbase that just went IPO, you have these other organizations, of course, that are going in and saying the largest activity that banks ever did was payments. And so having a way for us to automate that was the last mile of digital efforts. You always had the ability to automate the aspects of paper and making decisions on the computer, etc. But that payment process tended to be either by check or you had to do a wire transfer. It wasn't easy to make fast. And so digital payments is one of the projects, at least, that we've discussed. Considering that BVI has so many crypto companies and technology companies that have incorporated in BVI, one thing Elise and Derry and I are all passionate about is how do we have an exchange in the BVI? What is it that could look like? Who could run it? What are the local talent and resources that could deliver that so that you have the activity and the operating functions and so forth inside the BVI? Sure, are there infrastructure investments necessary to enable that, like data and so forth? Sure, yes, but it's worth it when there's a business plan around it. There was a great presentation to the BVI a couple weeks ago, right, Elise? Blockchain insurance, and not just having that again as a registered, but rather as an active company inside BVI. Putting in place the RoboFund advisory, blockchain real estate, and being able to digitize your land titles. Process automation. This is a key one. This is basic blocking and tackling. How do we get to automated tax returns? How do we get to automated civil cases? How do we get to, there's so many different ways for us to look at the Port Authority. Every area in the economy can look at process automation. And the World Economic Forum, people shouldn't be worried about jobs in this case. You're talking about increasing flow. World Economic Forum highlights that as a country increases its flow, increases its speed and efficiency, decreases friction between processes, the economy always grows. Never in human history have you sped up an economy, have you increased with technology, and there's been less jobs. That's never been the case. So we don't know why the newspapers all like to write those interesting headlines that the computers are going to take over the world, but it's never been the case. And fire didn't, the wheel didn't, and computers are not going to. And then consumer behavior analytics. So once you've got data from digital payments, insurance, other things, you also need to look at how do I delight my customer? How do I enable the hyper personalization that's delivered by Google and Amazon and so forth? Let's do that here. And that's where the analytics comes in as well. Companies either don't have enough data, or they have data but aren't doing enough with it. And so we want to solve both of those problems through these projects. And then ultimately, in order to have a crypto exchange or digital payments and so forth, you have to have some sort of infrastructure. So we hope that the utility companies or others are also part of this to say, look, what does cyber look like? What does the infrastructure look like in order to enable some of these things?
And these are just ideas in the sense that what we also looking for is for companies, organizations to volunteer, projects that they think students who come into this program would be able to work and help them. So it help the students develop and work on these projects, but it also helped the organization. So we're also looking for companies to volunteer projects and to volunteer so that we can have a reciprocal internship program.
Yeah, we've had some initial discussions with the Department of Information Technology for the BVI government. And they are very, very interested in having some of the students work with them to look at different ways they help them with their transition more towards e-government. So as the program develops and as we talk to more businesses about potential projects, there will be some additional practical ideas for how students can work with local businesses to do something different and to bring about changes. So it's a process. We've started discussions with some companies, but there are many, many more. And just in terms of some of you that are listening there who are already thinking about, hey, I could potentially use a student to help us with this project or that project, please let us know. And we'll talk to you and see how we can make it happen.
We do have exactly what Derek's saying. We want to talk with you. There are some a video here that you can hear one of the attorneys that went through our program. Ing Se Ming is an equity partner at Raja and Tan, and he was thinking, he's looking at technology. His clients always ask him about blockchain. How do we regulate the new digital banks that are in place? And he said, I need to go through this too. I need to understand it so that I can advise my clients, so that I know how to hire for technology people. And this law firm did something very interesting. They opened up a cybersecurity firm within their firm, so that way they could interact with the companies in a deeper way as well. And they realized, hey, the auditors shouldn't just be doing cybersecurity, and the cybersecurity folks shouldn't. We're lawyers. We know what to defend and what to look at as well. So it's been interesting dichotomy of people that come through the program and have great experiences. In terms of outcomes, I did want to share one story with you as well, which is that we've had a number of participants come from roles like the operations side of the bank. And then the bank opens up a fintech department, but they weren't invited. And they said, well, how do I get an invitation to this fun part? How do I get into this? So Pei Wen, one of the ladies who went through the program, she went through. Later on, she was able to get hired in as the chief operating officer in terms of a large fintech. So that was really exciting for her. Multinational fintech brought her on. We had also another guy named Glenn. He was a bank relationship manager. Going through the program, he got to understand, of course, he knew all the processes and front-end sales and what have you. And now he's one of the leaders of innovation and a peer-to-peer lending organization. And so he's gone into these new roles, and he's been hiring people from the fintech program as well, because he said, I want more of these types of people who get this background, get this experience, and can come in and they know how to work hard, very, very hard, and to deliver in our new organization as well.
And Keith, one of the interesting things that you've shared with us is that National University of Singapore has not been able to keep up with the job, the demands for jobs. So this is a field that continues to grow and grow exponentially. And there just is a need. And you are training people after you are training so many, but the supply does not meet the demand for these jobs.
Yeah, Elise highlighted that exactly right. You know, we went into this, like Elise mentioned at the beginning, which was there's this supply demand shortage. And so when I look at, for example, jobs over here on LinkedIn, there's one that I'm always keeping a look at, which is entry-level technology jobs here in Singapore. And when I click on that, there's 20,000 open jobs. And our issue is that the Singapore government has been very, very strict. They have basically stopped giving work passes for international employees last year. And so these companies, Rockwell Automation, Siemens, they all have to hire people that are in Singapore. And so as a result, we at School of Computing, while we have 1,000 people taking the courses and so forth, we have 1,300, we only graduate, 500 or so per year. So to get to 20,000 is very, very far. So we realized that we better start to train a lot of people, and not just fresh graduates, but mid-career people as well. So it's very much a war for talent. We are training as many people as we can. On this side of the ocean, we have very, very high targets, not because we're trying to train people for the sake of training, but because we have to get people into jobs. I was with Facebook this weekend and also on the cybersecurity company, and both of them said, look, we can't find people. We're struggling, Keith. You've got to get more people into and out of your program over to us. And the issue for Singapore is that if we don't deliver and fill those 20,000 jobs, then people from Vietnam will be hired, people from Indonesia will be hired. And the competition in Vietnam is fierce. I mean, they are so hungry coming out of school there. It's unbelievable. We've done teaching of banks and so forth and digital transformation in Hanoi and over in Ho Chi Minh as well. And the interest in learning, the people that just jump in, we worked with one bank there and they said, okay, here's 300 people, train all of them. So and people came and they studied and they worked with us. They worked with us on Saturdays. They make tremendous efforts. So all around the world, people are really diving into these areas that Elise and Derry are looking to have you trained on.
Okay. Any questions? We have already discussed the syllabus. That's the only question I see posted in the Q&A. So are there any questions from our attendees?
These are our participating companies, but yes, questions people have. Yeah, go ahead.
What dates are being considered?
Okay, so we're looking at a launch date of August. So this will be just after the festival holidays. Okay, but it's in progress, and we're developing. The first step is to, well, for me, we always start with the teacher, and so we've got the ability to deliver through Keith and the other professors there at NUS. So the content and the tutors and deliverers for the course are in place. The next step now, actually the two next steps are students won. And so this is why we're coming to you for your interest, letting you know about the program. There's then an application process, etc. So once we've got students in place and we have secured companies for the projects, the intention then is to launch in August. But there are some variables in there in terms of the companies and getting that organized. So it's a proposed launch date at this point.
Okay, we have a couple more questions in terms of what will be the time for the Zoom tutorial sessions and how many times will the program run, and are the payment terms flexible or one-off?
Right. Okay, so the times for the Zoom session are 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. BVI time. Of course, that is 6:30 to 8:30 a.m. for the professors over in Singapore. Okay, so that's the proposed time. In terms of the...
How many times will the program run?
Okay, yes, all right, so yes, all right, so this is the first, the pilot course. Okay, so we're hoping to run this and run it successfully, have it completed by the end of the year. And if all goes well and it, you know, the outcomes are what we anticipate the outcomes to be, then we could look at another program in spring of 2022.
And of course, we have a flexibility and a payment plan. So talk about that.
Right. Okay. So yes. So yes, looking at the course, you're thinking 5,100. That's an expensive course. Yes, it is an expensive course. But what we always try to do with the courses that are on the higher end is to put some type of flexible payment or installation payment plan in place. So we'll have one of those available where you pay at registration an initial fee, and then you'll pay the balance of the course throughout the duration of the course, completing your payments before graduation. Yeah, and we're also exploring some sponsorship. Yeah, so there's no promise or no guarantee there, but just in the same way that we're sharing this information with you as potential students, we'll also be talking with organizations locally about the program, etc., and we'll be looking for sponsorship. Yeah, okay. So stay tuned. By signing up for this session, you've given us your email address as a point of contact, and you'll be hearing from us as things progress and as things develop. Yeah, but flexible payment options so you can pay it off progressively.
And this question is for Professor Carter, for Keith. Has anyone used their knowledge in this program for business startups? And can you give an example? And I think you have multiple examples of that.
Absolutely. So yes, so as I mentioned earlier, Paywin, she was working at one of the large banks here in Singapore, and she decided to go over and was hired by an international startup to be chief operating officer over there and applying her knowledge. And also Glenn went from working in banking, traditional banking, and is heading up innovation at this peer-to-peer lending company, which is also relatively a startup, about 5 years old, but also has a great reputation. Monetary Authority of Singapore registered, and has done really good in terms of managing peer-to-peer lending. So good quality startups have brought people in. The third one I point to is Zilliqa. Zilliqa we're very proud of. It's one of the cryptocurrencies that was created here at National University of Singapore, and is a company that's been in business for a number of years now, but most importantly played a big part in the Singapore launch of the blockchain between the Singapore Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ exchange. And so they've also brought people in from the Fintech SG program.
What about students who have come out of the program? Have they done startups themselves? Not just be hired by startups?
So a number of people have gone out and started, like I said, we started this program last year. And so some people have started their startups. We're kind of interested to see how those go. More importantly, when in the design thinking portion, some folks have come back to us and said, hey, I want to commercialize this. And National University of Singapore, we have NUS Enterprise. And so we do take a keen interest in students that like to commercialize projects. And so there's a couple of folks that have gone and started their own startups. There's some that are coming to the university saying, let's work together and do this as well.
Okay, the next question was about who's vetting the candidates. As you mentioned, that there's going to be an interview process, so it's just as you're being admitted to a program, you have to go through a qualifying process. So Keith, can you talk about who's going to be doing the vetting and interviewing?
Sure. Well, it'll be myself and a couple of my team members here in Singapore who would do a Zoom session interview. And during that time, we take you through some questions. We do have an online assessment that's done as well. And we like to see basically what we're looking for. First is character, diligence, and that you're really going to be into the program, because we don't want to have reserved a slot, have you perhaps in a slot, and then you leave. We want people that go all the way through. And so the folks that make it through the program tell this to us. They say, it was really, really hard, but the way I survived was that I asked my professors questions, and also I worked well with my peers in the class and got support from them too. That's great. That's what we want. We want to build a good camaraderie amongst the classmates, which is why we make it a very, very challenging course. So, and there's a question I want to connect with on that. Can you do this while you're in a full-time job? Yes. Everyone that I've spoken of in terms of examples, Glenn, Pei Win, and also Sei Ming, that attorney, all of them were doing the program while they were doing their jobs, but they had sleepless nights. So it is difficult. Don't plan your vacation at the same time.
How many days a week from 6:30 to 8:30?
To be discussed. We're going to look at that, and of course, it depends on holidays and other things that go on as well. We're on different holiday calendars internationally, right? So you can imagine that sometimes it might be 5. In the worst case, it'll be 5 days a week, right? Not 7 days, right? We're not doing 7 weeks. Okay, so
looking at least.
But
at
maybe
least 3 to 5 days. Okay, at least 3 to 5 days.
Yeah. And this is a big sacrifice for Professor Carter and his team, who are waking up early in the morning to deliver this for the BVI, and we really ought to take advantage of this opportunity. Someone is asking if there will be a discount, Derry, for multiple persons from the same organization.
Yeah, okay, so that can be considered. I should mention that we've worked very hard to get the price to where it is now. We've already shaved off about $1,000+. So the program's already discounted, and we tried to get it as low as possible, not really wanting it to be cost prohibitive for persons who are really interested. But we could potentially look at a discount for multiple persons. It depends on how many persons from an organization.
And this is extreme value for money, and you're getting a certification from the National University of Singapore. So this is highly valued. So it's value for money. Do you need a software computer programming background? What if you do not have a background in anything remotely close? I think you talked about that, but you can amplify that point again.
So the preference is going to be people that are keen to learn the business and the technology. You have to be keen to learn both. So as if a person's coming in and they will, during our assessment, we'll understand where you are, and we'll also be asking tough questions. This is where you are. Are you willing to climb the hill to get to where you need to be? And so that's, you know, if you say, yes, hey, I've always wanted to do this, but I never had a way, and we have a good deep discussion about it, then yeah, because we do need multiple types of skill sets in, and your classmates who are very technical need to learn how to connect with and support the less technical folks, and the people that are less technical but are very good at business need to learn on the technical side, right? So that's where the class comes together. So we anticipate having a mixed class of people, but I can imagine, and you should imagine, that it's very, very helpful if you have a technical background in the first instance.
Okay, someone is asking for you to go over again the assessment for the program.
The assessments during the courses or the interview? Well, let me do it during the courses, because the interview is something I won't go too much in detail anyway. During the program, you have written assessments, which means we take quizzes online, of course, and it's of course open book. So that means that translates into professor speak as an even harder test. So because you can't ask memorized questions, you have to ask questions where you synthesize the knowledge together. Then there's also projects. So you have to deliver a project, especially in the design thinking. You have to get out of your chair and go and explore the market and so forth. So that's a very hands-on course, and you give a presentation, a project, and a prototype as well. And then the other aspect is, of course, developing the actual system work. So whether it's developing the analytics or developing the robot, those are things that you have to come in, and I'm going to put it in quotes, program. We won't be doing Python or JavaScript programming during this short course, but you will be doing programming as it is in 2021, where you're dragging and dropping and considering the ways of algorithmic thinking, letting the computer do the programming, which is what we can use today and leap forward to today. I warn my data scientist students in the master's program, I say, look, the whole world is changing. You're learning, I'm teaching you this very detailed programming stuff, which very few people around the world know. But you don't have to know what I'm teaching you in order to get to base number one and base number two. It's later when you're really tweaking the model and designing the car or something that you need that programming now. These days, you can get right to first base with RapidMiner, Alteryx, other types of Power BI that lets you do this drag and drop activity to automate business and automate analytics.
Okay, someone is asking, how do they do the traineeship, I guess the internship program, and still do a 9-to-5 job?
Balance, time management. And we also have women who have a little child in the background as well, juggling, making sure to get through all aspects. The nice thing about Zoom is that you do get to take the course from where you are. The bad thing about Zoom is that it's really your discipline to stay focused with us and stay on task. And then once it's over, go back and do the assignments and homework and more. So your time management is key here.
Yeah.
We do have people fail. We do have people fail.
You have to be very keen, very keen, very keen to learn. Yeah.
Well, it's about making adjustments. And I always like to say, well, the adjustments are not permanent. It's just for a specific period of time. So, when we look at our lives, a lot of the things that we do gratuitously, the TV, et cetera, it's just a matter of cutting out some strategic areas and substituting that time with study for a period of time. And the reward is great. But like anything else, it is true, no pain, no gain, right?
Okay, in terms of timing, other than the 2 hours of instruction via Zoom, how much time on average is one expected to commit to this program on the assumption that a student may be in a full-time job?
I don't assume what you're doing, but we do say that we would expect 20 hours of work, and we just to set expectations. We do expect that level of diligence and care.
And will the internship be online?
No, it should be with organizations in BVI, but it depends on your COVID-19 position, whether you go into the office or not in the company. Those are always questions that are, because it's in August, we have no idea what the world looks like in August. So be flexible, be ready to be flexible.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, Keith, there's some of the work, group work and individual work, huh?
Absolutely, group and individual, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it would be a combination of both in person and online, because one of the things that you said early on was that your marketability is not just for the BVI, it's for companies who are now not requiring you to be in location, because they can hire from anywhere. So while you can take this program, you can get a job somewhere across the world. If you are one of the persons who excel, I'm sure you become more marketable to this organization, and this field is growing exponentially. So it's something that I think people would want to make sure that they get trained in.
Elise is exactly right. And, if you spend, I have a formula. If I spend $1 and I don't get anything for it, then I don't want to spend even the $1. So if you're not coming here, and I know you're not coming here for a class, because that's theoretically, you're coming here because you want to do something after the class, in a new role, in a new company, you want to set something up, you want to dive into what you've been reading in the newspaper, great. Then that's what we're looking for. What can you do after the class?
Yes, to answer your question, we will be making this this session available. We are recording it, so it's going to be available, and so the slides in turn will be available, because the recording will be available for people who want to view it afterwards. And for those who actually didn't get an opportunity to tune in to the session, so BVI Finance and FSI will be sending it out to all the people that are registered.
All right.
If we don't have any more pressing questions, I think
One more then.
there's one more.
Someone is asking,
Can you work on a project that
you work within your own company?
Yeah, definitely. Why not?
Of course.
That's even better. You should talk. A lot of our attendees talk to their bosses and say, hey, listen, I'm looking at this course, or I'm taking this course. I'd like to apply it in my work. And that's the best. That's really the best way to do it, because then you learn, you come back out and you do. And that's where we put in those 3 words I started with at the beginning: know, decide, and act, right? So please keep this in mind. And can I wrap up with something, Elise and Derek?
Absolutely.
This, as we've taken you through, this is a really exciting time in history. We're, in our generation, we're seeing something similar to what happened with electricity, with the telephone, and the car back in the 1920s. And we take all those things for granted today. But think about the jobs, right? There were light poles that needed to be put up. There were mechanic shops instead of horse stables. The job of transportation maintenance was the same, but the role was completely different. No longer taking care of the horse, but now you had to take care of the engine in the car. So we can expect the roles over the next 20 years to tremendously change. And you all should know that the largest growing companies, fastest growing companies are data-driven companies. We know them, they're household names, Instagram, Google, etc., right? Amazon though as well. And the competition is not just local, it's global. So I hope that from what we've heard today, we've said that we would give you some things to know about in terms of now robotic process automation, APIs, and more, banking, what's happening. We said we hope that you would decide. And then I hope at a minimum you take this action. It's not just about you. We hope that as you go through this program, if you do take it, you'll learn, you'll go out and do, but we want you to be able to create 5 more positions as well. We'd love for you to share with your loved ones, your family members, look, this is what fintech is all about. This is what a startup is. This is why they succeed and fail. And this is the technology necessary to get it done. So don't just keep the knowledge to yourself, share it. Go out there, do something with it, and make BVI even better than it already is.
Yes. Well said. Derry, do you?
Yeah. So next step, look out in your email for an initial application form. Yeah, and that's where you'll be able to express your interest and get on a list for more details. So we're developing that special form, and it should be in your email by the middle of next week.
And I just want to thank Derry and Keith, especially Keith, for waking up so early to be with us. And this is a commitment to the BVI. He has fallen in love with the BVI since he got here a couple years ago, and did the first Fintech immersion program we did at the HLSCC Community College, as well as he met with the House of Assembly, as well as with government and various agencies in government. But there is an opportunity, and BVI needs to avail itself of that opportunity. Our vision is to see BVI progress and transform, not just just go about, but we want to, Keith used to use the term when we first started conversations about leapfrogging. We want to leapfrog. There are countries in Africa, for example, and I think even here in the Caribbean, which moved from having, they didn't have any phones, the landlines. They just leapfrogged into mobile phones. And they just do everything now on their mobile technology. And this is what we are talking about. So it's not just envisioning how we can just take, gradual steps, but how can we leapfrog and transform the BVI digitally? How can we get into this fintech program? And this is an opportunity like no other. We are dealing with the most tech-savvy country in the world, and one of the premier universities who is pioneering in this field. And the Amazons, the Googles, the Tencents, they all run into establish in Singapore. We want some of that here in the BVI, and we want to get people in the BVI trained and ready, not just to navigate the BVI financial services industry or the BVI economy, but we want you to be globally prepared. And we have an opportunity, and let's avail ourselves of this opportunity. So I want to thank you for those of you who came online and took the opportunity to join us for this information session. And I thank Keith and Derry for their time. And I want to say good night and good morning. Have a great day, Keith.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And I put my LinkedIn in the chat if you want to keep in touch. All the best.
Okay.
All right, Keith, have a good day.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.